Great, thank you. Thanks everyone for being here tonight. As we mentioned earlier, we're down a number of members because whenever we change the meeting date, we tend to have lots of conflicts. So apologies for that, but with the Labor Day, that's what we ended up doing. So anyway, but we are have each of the commissions represented. So I think we will go ahead and start with our presentation from Ty and Lily. And also we need to mention too that this is one of our 25% of virtual meetings because I'm out of town. So I appreciate the fact that you all are willing to still meet virtually. And we'll be meeting back in person in October.
Yes, and it will be at the small conference room here at Trades.
Great. Okay, good. Thank you. So Ty, you want to take it away?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ty. I'm in Department of Environmental Services in the Office of Sustainability and Environmental Management. And I'm going to be talking about the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan Implementation Update. I hope some of you know something about it, but we're going to give a very about a 15-minute presentation about this Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan. So this Chesapeake Bay Preservation Implementation Update is something we've been working on for about a year. It's an existing plan that we have updated because the plan is over 20 years old. There are three components. Sorry, the chats are popping up here. So there are three components to the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan. There's a Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act, there's a Preservation Ordinance, and there's the plan. And we also have a TMDL, which is basically an allocation of pollutants that can enter the Chesapeake Bay. And Arlington County has an allocation for that through the TMDL program. So there's a Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act that was passed in 1988, and it requires local governments to be responsible to manage these specific areas, which are called Chesapeake Bay Preservation Areas. And so to comply with the Act, Arlington County has put in place an ordinance, and the ordinance details how we manage these Chesapeake Bay Preservation Areas, including how development is regulated and how tree protection and other things are implemented within these areas. And the TMDL program has nutrient reduction targets, and those are met through our permit, and these are projects that the county puts in place to mitigate for developed area. So the reason why we're updating the plan is that we are we had an audit basically that was done by the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, which is the state regulatory agency for environmental issues, and they noted that in doing the audit, we needed to update our plan. And everything else with the program was okay, but we just had a plan on the books that was outdated, and we were given a timeline of a year to update it. And we negotiated a timeline that was more reasonable for us. So we are planning to adopt the plan by winter, spring of next year. And we do have a draft plan that's pretty close to final. That's available on our website. So in this presentation, we're going to give you a brief overview of what the plan contains. And if you would like to see it in more detail, it is available online. So the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan has 4 elements. We're required to define and map what's called resource protection areas. So these are areas closest to the streams, 100 feet within the streams, within the actual stream body that is protected through the resource protection area designation. We have criteria to prevent increase in pollution during development. These are erosion and sediment control and post-construction practices to mitigate for pollution that's results from development. There are also controls for land use, development, and subdivisions. And in the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan has to be included with Arlington County's comprehensive plan. So it's, it will be part of the it's a comprehensive plan element. So similar to the FNRP, the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan is also part of the county's overall plans. So as you can imagine, since 2001, which was when this plan was previously completed, there have been several changes in how, water resources are managed. We have a much stronger stormwater program. There has been a stormwater tax that was passed in 2008. We had a stormwater ordinance and a master plan, which was adopted in 2014. And as mentioned earlier, we have TMDL targets for the county. So we obviously do a lot more projects, and we also manage review of private projects to ensure that pollution is reduced into the Chesapeake Bay. And so what we've done in updating this plan is mentioned all the components and practices that are in place to manage stormwater within the county. So again, this is a highlight of the sort of significant programs that have been put in place since 2001. So the RPA areas have been designated. The county has a map that shows resource protection areas, and these are defined by in GIS by 100 feet from a 100-foot buffer from the stream or other water body. The ordinance also has tree canopy requirements that were passed in 2003. And then moving on to 2014, the Stormwater Management Ordinance was passed, and this requires that there's a land disturbance activity permit that's filed by private developers, and also they have to go through a stormwater management calculations and practices such as green infrastructure on projects. 2014, the tree canopy replacement requirements were also adopted into the stormwater management ordinance. In 2018, we had an RPA map update, so there have been revisions to the RPA map, and some sites were taken out and some sites were added into the RPA area. The latest addition to the overall environmental program has been the LDA 2.0, which is the land disturbance activity permit, has been updated. So it includes practices to reduce stormwater flow coming off new development projects, new and redevelopment projects. So these are other plans that have some relevance to the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan. Plans and permits. We have a stormwater master plan, a stormwater permit. We have the resource protection area map. There's also a floodplain ordinance and flood insurance rate maps that are actually also being revised, and the public space master plan, which has been completed, and the forestry and natural resources plan, which is currently which has a draft plan currently being reviewed out for public comment. So all these, we've referenced sections of all these plans within the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Plan, just to show that, they're all working together to manage environmental resources. And as background information, like what is a resource protection area? It's basically the stream body here shown in blue. It's the area 100-foot buffer from the stream body is the resource protection area. So any development in this area has to meet certain performance criteria. It has to be reviewed by staff. Any tree removal is reviewed. And there isn't really a limit on the size of the project. Everything is reviewed. Everything outside the RPA is called the resource management area. And these two together make up the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area. So the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance stipulates how these RPA areas are managed, and everything else, the Stormwater Management Ordinance applies to the RMA, which makes up the whole county. So pretty much all the areas within the county are being managed for the Chesapeake, to manage the Chesapeake Bay, meeting our requirements for the Chesapeake Bay. So one thing we've done as part of this update is we have included multiple maps that show the areas that are protected. So this is one of the maps, and it shows the resource protection areas. In the red is basically the 100-foot buffer around streams. So about 2% of the homes in Arlington County are within RPA areas. So this map is publicly available. People can put in their address and figure out if they are on RPA, and we also do mailing to residents to let them know that the requirements for projects in the RPA. And if a private homeowner wants to do a project in the RPA, there is an application process they would have to go through. Includes showing where the RPA line is, where they propose to put in development, mitigation they would put in place, and we do go back and forth a lot to determine whether the project is approvable and review their mitigation that they propose as part of their project. So there are about 40 projects per year that we receive, and there are a few that go through a public hearing process depending on the amount of impact, and there are certain stipulations that require a public hearing process. So the LDA program, this is the Land Disturbance Activities Permit. It applies to all projects that are greater than 2,500 square feet. So RPA review doesn't really have a restriction on the size of the project. Land Disturbance Activity Permit, which applies throughout the county, applies when there's greater than 2,500 square foot of impact. And basically all these projects have to put in place stormwater management practices. So this includes bioretention, permeable pavement, removal of impervious cover, and other ways to ensure that their post-development impact is not greater than their existing impact. So most of the homes, 60% of the LDA reviews are for single-family homes. So the LDA regulation is mostly for single-family homes. And the LDA 2.0 program, which was finalized in 2021, ensures that there are additional practices to manage the volume of water coming out. So practices such as what's shown in the image from the capturing the roof runoff and sort of slowing down how quickly that comes through would help in reducing the flow that comes off a new home development project. So this is sort of the latest and greatest as far as how new home projects are going to manage rainfall coming off their projects from their new development projects. Again, additional maps that have been included in this plan show where we have ponds, wetlands, seeps, springs. We show the watershed boundaries, which is in black here, and the Potomac River. So, you can feel free to zoom in here and see different areas that are outlined. But basically, this map shows the watershed boundaries, and also seeps and springs. Another map that we've included is for impervious surfaces, and that's, a lot of the county is either roadway or homes, so there's limited green space, but we are required to show we are required to include maps showing impervious surface within the county. Additionally, we also included public green stormwater infrastructure. So these are the green streets that are implemented within the public right-of-way. So there are also green roofs, permeable pavements, and reforestation areas that have been implemented as part of either parks projects or independently green streets projects. And then every time a new redevelopment project goes through the land disturbance activity permit, they're also required to put stormwater infrastructure practices in place. And you can see these red dots show where private bioretention practices have been put in place. The green shows where green roofs, and the gray shows where permeable pavement has been put in place. So, lots of practices, and the numbers show actually the number of facilities that are in place. And there's a whole maintenance program to ensure these are all operational over time. So the plan does mention sort of future concerns, climate change, frequency and intensity of heavy storms. Our funding is going to be transitioning potentially to a stormwater utility fee. So there's a mention of that. We also talk about the biophilic cities network and the opportunities with being part of that. The Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act has also been amended to include protection for trees, mature trees, and also additional review for climate change impact. And with all that said, there's also continued pressure for development and growth. So all this adds to the challenge of managing the resource protection areas. So we have distributed the public draft for this in the summer, and the public comment period closed in August. So we're currently presenting to commissions. This is our first one, and we're planning to have the board adoption in 2023. We're going to be going to the Long Range Planning Commission in October. So we'll be sharing the plan and look forward to adoption next year. With that, we're open to take any questions.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I know that is a lot of information, especially for folks who are not as familiar with how all the different pieces fit together. I've got a couple questions, but I'm going to turn it over to other commissioners. If anybody has any questions they would like to ask. I will looking for hands up, or commissioners, you're welcome to just turn on your cameras if you've got a question. If I don't see any, then I will ask a couple. Ty, I have a question about and I should know this, but so a lot of the work done in 2003 on the tree canopy requirements, the 2014 tree canopy replacements, and then the RPA updates really focused on water quality primarily, correct? As opposed to water quantity?
Correct, yeah.
So do we characterize the LDA 2.0 more as sort of focusing on that quantity issue and some of the flooding and some of those kind of things, or is it still very much focused on the water quality issue?
It's focused on the water quantity, and I think that's because that was sort of a missing piece with the stormwater management ordinance. Was that, what do you do with the first few inches of rainfall that might bypass those facilities? So
Sorry,
go ahead.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that happened after the July 2019 storm, hi, everybody.
Lily Whitesell.
Lily Whitesell, was that, I think that the board directed, and there was sort of an interdepartmental group within Arlington County that came together and said, okay, what else can we do? We already have this, the 2014, the water quality things that had been put in place. But there was this sort of effort to say, okay, what more can we do within the current regulatory, without passing a new ordinance, basically. And so came together and pulled together a lot of different, new ideas. And one of the main things is saying, okay, instead of just looking at water quality, let's also add water quantity in here, and doing that through a variety of different ways, managing 3 inches of runoff from any increased impervious surfaces, and also any impervious surfaces that would be draining towards common areas like backyards, as opposed to draining towards the street. and using gravity detention tanks above ground cisterns, basically, to capture more water and reduce that flooding risk. And of course, there's a water quality benefit to that as well, right? And then also looking at soil amendment. I am sorry, I'm about to get interrupted, I think. And also adding some more accounting for the stormwater benefit of trees. So kind of pulling in all of these additional ways of addressing those. But yes, you're right, water quantity and flooding was a major push of this, but it was kind of in direct response to the lot flooding level of thing, as in conjunction with some of the flood resilient Arlington bigger watershed scale projects. But this is really to address the lot issues, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And then we get a little more clarification then on sort of the tree canopy requirements under the first section, not the LD 2.0, but presumably that, is a huge benefit in so many other ways other than just stormwater. But we're still very constrained in in the RPA, yeah, we have a lot more control over what we can and cannot do, but outside of the RPA, what are those percentages again? And I guess that's all sort of mixed up with missing middle, as well as some of the recommendations in the Forestry Natural Resource Plan as well on lot coverage. So can you just touch on that a little bit?
Will admit that I think, Ty, you might know more than I do on this, and Carolyn, you might know more than either of us about some of the details of this.
Unlikely,
but Ty, do you want to? Or Alonso or Jen?
Yeah, so
if you all have more detail.
Yeah, the interesting thing with the ordinance is, even though we refer to the ordinance as the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance, the tree canopy requirements apply to basically the whole county. So, and it's administered. So when we have a land disturbance activity permit, it's reviewed by urban forestry for meeting those tree canopy requirements. So we do the review to make sure the project minimizes impact in the resource management protection area. And then there's another plan sheet that's submitted for the landscape with the landscape conservation plan. And in that, they will have to do the calculation for the tree preservation targets. So, and that's, whether the project is in resource protection area or not, they have to meet those tree canopy requirements.
which I know a lot of people feel are way too low, right? But that's what we're given. That's essentially from the Virginia Assembly. Is that correct? That's where those come from, those targets?
That's a good question. I'm not sure how we developed those targets. So we have 10% tree canopy for sites zoned business, commercial, industrial. These are all minimum. 10% for tree canopy for residential sites with 20 or more units. 15% for residential sites zoned with more than 20 units, and 20% for tree canopy for residential sites that are 10 units or less. So, as far as where these requirements stand and whether they're too low, I mean, that would be a good discussion. I'm not aware of plans to update it, but there may be plans.
Well, and I think that's why there's a lot of tension right now between, where we're supposedly headed on this. And I know in the Forestry Natural Resource Plan, one of the recommendations is on the lot coverage. And this plan does not include any reference to that. Is that correct?
Correct. We don't get into that. We do mention.
I would love to see that it would get into it and to echo that recommendation, because I think it would help to have that, as we've seen from a lot of these, the reinforcement that you get from one plan to another. If they're all trying to work together, if it could be reinforced. So I know I've made that comment already, but Perhaps tell me where we are. I know you're getting ready to go to Long Range Planning Committee, as is the Forestry and Natural Resource Plan in October. So presumably y'all are still incorporating some of the public comments. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we'll be making tweaks as we, receive comments through the commissions and others. I'll be interested to see I've reviewed the FNRP, but I'll be curious to see how it's been addressed in there, and we could also cross-reference. Because the way we've approached this is we're sort of gathering all the current practices and incorporating it into the plan. So if there is future changes that could be incorporated, then we'll be curious to do some research on that and include it, and would have to have a conversation with our urban foresters.
Okay, well, as you can imagine, I will certainly be encouraging that comment to come. Which commissions are you going to for the rest of this month?
So in October, we're going to LRPC, and then later in the year, the Planning Commission.
So you're not going to hit any of the other commissions?
Currently not, but we
Okay,
are,
So if at least the 3-member commissions represented here have an interest, then that might be an option to get our comments in early rather than later, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. David?
I just want to make sure I understood this. You're not doing a briefing with C2E2 on this?
No, we've talked to them, and we've noted that we're interested in coming, but we currently don't have an invitation. But we are also considering doing like a briefing memo and sending it to them if we don't get invited.
Well, I hope you do get invited.
Just for everybody to kind of all be on the same page, we are really doing this plan because DEQ said we had to. If we were doing a proper, internally led planning update, it would not be, get it all done, written, and then out the door in a year. This is a consult level, engagement. It's not involved. It's not,
Right.
collaborate, because it is triggered by this regulatory requirement. There are very specific, rules about what needs to be included in this document and things like that. That being said, we can, try and take whatever feedback, is provided. But it is sort of a managing expectations kind of document. It's building on, the Stormwater Master Plan, which had extensive engagement and other planning efforts. And certainly the most important planning effort going on right now is the Forestry and Natural Resources management plan. So, all of the things that you all have been loading like Easter eggs into that document are probably more important than like ends up getting into this plan, but still important. As I am here representing the CBPP, this is still important too.
No, I understand that this is really a mandated compliance document to show what your numbers are and what your targets are and what you're doing. It's not really as much of a visionary plan.
This is not actually a targets. This is not numbers and targets. So the numbers and targets was the Chesapeake Bay TMDL action plan, which was earlier in the year. This is programmatic.
Which is actually in the hierarchy below this one, right?
There, hierarchical, I don't know.
Okay, well, I don't.
They all come down from the Bay
Go into
Act.
that. I just wanted to say, I understand this is not a plan like the other plans are, and your process doesn't have to work the same way. And this is basically, documenting what you've got going, and it's not really the vehicle for creating a vision for the future in the same way that the stormwater plan or the FNRP. And so, yeah, we don't, it would be good, as Carolyn says, and I think several of us have made suggestions to try to crosswalk some of the pieces to other things, to give them a hook, to the other connections. But
and there's been so much wonderful work that has been done on the FNRP.
So now I get to my actual question that I was going to. Is the version that's on still on the webpage. Is that a live active version so that you can see what changes have there been or what input there's been? Or when do we see what the version that's going to go to this, for example, Planning Commission, when can we see that?
Gonna punt that over to Ty.
Yeah, so we received a few public comments and then we also have internal comments we're working through. We should have something to just share back out with everyone in about 2 weeks, and that includes the EQ. So we can share that version with you.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you to all of you for your comments.
Yeah, thank you for coming tonight too. We appreciate it because it does overlap, and you know what you all do is very integral to the kind of stuff we're working on as well. So it's helpful to have this. Any other comments, questions from commissioners? If not, we will let Lily and Ty. You're welcome to stay, but don't want you to feel obligated. So anyway, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And we might come back to you with a request for a letter of support as we move forward to the Planning Commission, just to show that it's been looked at by Enerjack and approved to some extent.
We typically do it through the commission letters. We make recommendations to each of the 3 commissions. So, but I can assure you there would be also a recommendation that there be a little crosswalking. So
Okay.
watch out what to ask for, right?
Right.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Really appreciate
you.
your time. And before we move on to our next agenda item, I forgot to introduce the newest member of the Parks and Natural Resource Team, Sue Kim. So Sue, do you want to just click on your camera real quickly and say hello? We won't make you stay, but did want to introduce you.
So Sue, today's her first day. She's our new natural resource technician joining us. Like I say, starting today, a lot of experience with Shenandoah National Park and doing a lot of work. So we're really excited to have her on the team. And then we're making her stay late on her very first day. So I just want to welcome her on board. I know you guys know that we've been hoping for a long time to replace our tech. So excited to have a full team again. So
Welcome aboard. We're really happy to have her.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And thank you for tuning in tonight, Sue. I'm sure we'll have other opportunities to meet with you. So thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Okay, we will go ahead and move to Ryan Delaney to give us just a quick update on where we are with the Forestry and Natural Resource Plan.
Great, thanks. I'll pull up my slide deck, which is mercifully, I think for you all, much shorter than my typical one. So let me get that going. Cool. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Cool, thanks. Great. So my name's Ryan Delaney. I'm I'm a planner with DPR and project manager for the Forestry and Natural Resources Plan update. Thank you all for having me back. I'm here tonight, as Caroline said, to give you kind of just a timeline update, a quick midstream summary of our engagement efforts, and really to create the space for you all to discuss the draft now that it's been out for a little bit in advance of your commission meetings and our public workshop later this month. So less speaking for me this evening and hopefully some questions and discussion from you all. So by now, you all are familiar with this slide, but I wanted to provide a quick check-in. Currently, we're in the draft plan engagement opportunities phase, indicated by the orange arrow pointing towards our commission briefings. We're kicking those off this evening with you all and have several on the calendar this month, culminating in our virtual public workshop at the end of the month. So as a reminder, our public comment period began the beginning of August with the publication of the draft, and it closes on October 3rd. I'd like to highlight 3 key dates and a few other opportunities for public engagement tonight. The first is the community briefing and educational presentation scheduled for the evening of Wednesday, 9/14. That's this week, 2 days from now. sponsored by Armin, the Tree Stewards, the Master Gardeners, and Eco Action Arlington. This is designed to provide an orientation opportunity for folks who are new or at least newer to the process, and a chance to ask clarifying questions of DPR staff before our public meeting and the close of the comment period. Really, hopefully, sort of allowing us to prime the pump for good discussion on the 29th. So our virtual public workshop has been scheduled for the evening of Thursday, September 29th. We're really going to be in listening mode and facilitation mode, I should say. There, it's going to be a discussion-focused workshop with a short introductory presentation from county staff. But the majority of the evening we want to spend in topic-focused breakout groups that will allow folks to discuss their thoughts on the plans, how it can be improved, what's missing in sort of a peer-to-peer environment. We also plan to attend several commission meetings throughout September, and we'll provide an update to the PSNP IAC at their next meeting in October. And as Ty mentioned earlier, we are also going, I believe, the same evening, October 19th, to LRPC to discuss these two interrelated documents. And throughout September, we'll be continuing our schedule of pop-up events until the end of the month. So lastly, and I know I just said it on the last slide, but I just want to reiterate, we're closing our online feedback opportunities and wrapping up the engagement period on October 3rd. So for those of you who have yet to dive into either the Conveyo tool or our feedback form, you have plenty of time, but sort of immediately after our public workshop, we'll be closing that so we can move into the analysis phase. Which, speaking of, before we dive into our discussion this evening, I wanted to provide a quick update on our engagement effort. As I said, we're only midway through our comment period, but I think we're getting some great feedback, and wanted to take the opportunity to thank all of you for helping get the word out and for staffing our pop-ups and supporting our staff out there. So I provided a snapshot of our engagement stats here on the slide. The feedback form has 190 responses. We have 178 comments and suggested edits on the Conveyo tool. And our engagement team has had a chance to chat with close to 600 individuals through our pop-up events. As of last Friday, though Adam pointed out that we've had a few engagements this weekend too that are not reflected in these stats. So in total, we've seen around 1,000 active engagements across 13 pop-up events to date and our online engagement forums. We've been spreading the word on the engagement opportunity through social media, through our partner organizations, signboards in our parks and community centers with QR codes inside Arlington, and a couple other different mechanisms. I also wanted to share a little bit of our qualitative aspects of our engagement to date, including some initial observations about who we're engaging with and who's responding to our outreach. Our online engagement demographically tends towards white English-speaking single-family homeowners, while the pop-ups have tended towards renters, a more racially diverse population, and have engaged folks speaking various languages, predominantly Spanish. And as we move into the second half of our engagement period, we're pivoting to push out the SurveyMonkey digital engagement form and our other tools to more and different audiences to really kind of cast the net as wide as possible. In terms of feedback, at this point, we've heard the full range of responses about the draft, from those who loathe it for various reasons to those who love it. Some folks responded that the document is too technical and difficult to understand. We've had folks say that we want to save all the trees and plant more, and others have said that the plan is too aggressive in its recommendations. We've also got a lot of great suggested edits and constructive comments for how to improve the document. So currently, our communication staff are tagging and analyzing comments as they come in. We're not anywhere near close to being able to present that analysis, but it is going to help us inform the topics for our breakout rooms on the virtual engagement on the 29th, and ultimately to help us refine the draft as well. So on the 29th, we'll be in a better position to share out a summary of what we heard in our community engagement to date. And hopefully that'll help guide the peer-to-peer discussions that we're going to be facilitating in the breakouts. So as those sort of buckets of comments and themes emerge, we'll use those to sort of shape the final agenda for our last public engagement. It'll be a good opportunity, I think, to reflect some of what we heard back to our attendees and folks who are engaging with us for the first time. So again, just wanted to thank you all for your participation so far. Any help to get the word out and gather more input throughout this month would be very much appreciated. I know a lot of you have already done a lot of work, but please, as you move about the county and engage with your friends and family members and coworkers, please have the QR code ready if you can. We would really appreciate it. Cool. So as I said, it's a short update from us this month, and that's it from me in terms of updates on the project. But before we moved into your all's discussion of the plan and your initial impressions, I wanted to give you all the opportunity to ask any clarifying questions of us on the document itself or on the process moving forward that might help inform your discussion. We're happy to answer as best we can any questions or concerns in that realm before we turn the floor back to you all. So thanks.
Great, thanks, Ryan. I appreciate that. So do commissioners have any questions that Ryan has not already answered previously? I'd be happy to entertain any of those now. I know a lot of us have spent a whole lot of time with this document, so we're probably getting into the weeds in it in a big way. If not, we can open this up for David.
I was either too late on the previous question or too early on the current question. I thought it would be important to say that this has been kind of a long and complicated process for a number of reasons, but I just want to say how much I appreciate, and I think others do, the staff work and Ryan's management of this overall process, but also for all the other staff that are engaged in it. This is kind of new territory, and it's precedent setting, and it's very important that this product be everything that it can be. As a new element in the comp plan, it needs to stand shoulder to shoulder with other plans that have gone around the cycle a couple times. And I think, making something up out of whole cloth, and I know that certainly it's built on the urban forestry plan and the natural resources management plan, but there's an awful lot of content that was not in either of those. And this is, we're creating a new concept for what this plan includes. So I just want to say thanks to all the staff that are kind of moving this forward and keeping the thinking open for something that not only is it the first time we're building it, but as far as anyone can tell, no other jurisdiction has an integrated, holistic plan with the scope that this will have when it's done. And that's something pretty special for Arlington, as well as for other jurisdictions as an example. So I just wanted to say thanks on that.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you. We really appreciate the support and happy to have you all digging into this.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. Yeah, I really appreciate the responsiveness of staff in this process, and a lot to give and take, and I hope that we'll continue to have that over the next month or so as we try to finalize this document. I know there had been some comments circulated, David.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just getting confused about the little hand sign there.
Okay, so you're good. I will just continue. There had been some, a little bit of folks circulating some ideas about what they would like to think about a little more. And I know that each of us are going back to our respective commissions at the end of the month. And so we'll have an opportunity to get some of that down on paper, because I assume that each of these commissions will also be sending a letter with more formalized comments. So this was just really an opportunity to sort of bat some of that around a little bit. Unfortunately, we're missing a number of our members of this committee, so we may have to wait and see what everybody comes up with. And I know that we are starting to hear some themes. One that I've heard a lot is the lack of urgency and some concerns about the general tone of the intro, that it may well not capture that urgency of the loss of trees, especially, and the degradation of our natural areas. So I think that's something that I'm certainly hearing, and don't know if others have had that as well. And then some, I know that Joan had raised the issues of that the targets may not be aggressive enough, that especially a 40% tree canopy target. But I know we've had a lot of discussion about that in this group as well, that county has done, I think, a tremendous job of planting the available areas that they have in increasing the tree canopy, but we're still seeing a huge loss in our single family neighborhoods in particular. And sort of, back to the discussion we just had with Ty and Lily too, that we sort of need to be attacking this from all different directions and can't just rely on one plan to get this one done. So it's going to have to be very much a coordinated effort of the comprehensive plans together. A couple of other comments that I know have come up have been the re-emphasize the need for land acquisition. We had some pretty aggressive targets in the public spaces master plan, but I know there's been some frustration with folks that are following this a little closely, especially some of the Park and Rec Commission, with a number of properties that have been available, but that the county board, for whatever reason, didn't move forward on. And so I think to reemphasize the need for land acquisition, and I know there's also issues of funding of that as well. So anyway, being more creative, and I know that's some of the recommendations that we have in this plan as well, is to possibly think more broadly on how we might have a better funding stream to be able to act on these parcels when they become available. A couple of the other issues that were raised was hoping to develop a stronger connection between the green infrastructure and climate resiliency. We've heard that from a couple commenters. And I know some people feel like we can never say that strongly enough. And, others that we're not going to solve every problem in this plan. So I think that you can sort of see both sides of that, as Ryan had said, that you're hearing those who loathe things and those who love it. But this is another one of those, you're going to get the two extremes, I think, on the climate resiliency side as well. And let me see, some of the others were, the other thing that we talked about with Ty and Lily, that would like to have more of the connections with stormwater management, the natural capital, green infrastructure, and to tie those more closely together. And if it's not going to be this time around on the Chesapeake Bay plan, that perhaps we need to have that as an aspirational goal for the next time around, when it is more collaborative than just consulting for the Chesapeake Bay plan. And then I know Jill had raised some issues about wanting to make sure that the historically underserved areas get more focus on the tree canopy. I know there's a fair amount of that in the plan now, but I guess we all are focusing on the issues that are of greatest concern to us. I know Jill has spent a lot of time working on that topic also. And then some of the other comments we've heard is doing a better use of the tools that we have, going back to lot coverage, and that may well be something we want to do as absolute highest priority to address some of these issues, especially in the face of the missing middle recommendations. Likewise on setbacks, especially those linked to tree conservation. A number of people have raised the weed ordinance issue in the conservation landscaping and trying to encourage that. Also, the fact that the Stormwater Wise program was discontinued, and somehow bring that back, even if without grants, if it could at least be from the educational perspective, that was a really important program in encouraging people and getting them to understand why that was important, to get rid of some of the lawns and be planted with native plants. And then I think a couple of them that we've talked about in NRJEG also is like the noise ordinance. And I know Parks and Natural Resources is focusing on some of the use of the getting rid of some of the gas-powered maintenance equipment, and that kind of goes both for the carbon emissions, but also on the noise ordinance side of things too. And Joan also mentioned the issue of the tax benefits for conservation of land, that we know it's so difficult to do that in such a land constrained area. And it's so expensive for people to do that kind of thing that we need to be thinking much more creatively. And so that was, anyway, something that I know Joan had raised earlier, that we ought to be focusing some attention on that. Another comment we had was the lack of specific metrics. And Ryan, maybe that's a question for you too, because I know in the public space master plan, a lot of that was addressed in the implementation matrix. And yeah, thanks you. So do you want to address that one?
Sure. Yeah, I think we're tackling this in a couple of different ways, I think, in the document as constructed. As you mentioned, the implementation matrix, which, you know, comes sort of as a result of finalizing the document, and the public engagement will have sort of that the when in time and the cost estimate for implementing these actions. So those types of metrics are to be included in the final draft. But we typically don't include those until we've had a chance to engage with the public, gauge people's priorities, and sort of have a better understanding of when in time we want to tackle some of the implementation items. In terms of like data and metrics, a lot of that is in 4.1 in the document, around the recommendations to have more regular inventories and sort of beef up our data collection and data maintenance for things like tree canopy, you know, flora and fauna communities, natural lands, all of our sort of baseline conservation metrics. And it has intersections with some of the recommendations in the plan about further studying things like creating a meadow management plan that would obviously require us to have like more specific, measurable, and sort of time-bound goals for specific implementation items that are sort of, I hate the pun at this point, but more in the weeds than what the comp plan element sort of lends itself to. So that said, if there are like specific pieces of data or metrics that folks feel are like integral to the analysis that yields these recommendations, or things that, even just things from an educational standpoint, we want to highlight in the final draft in terms of like figures and maps and charts, we're more than open to any and all feedback on that front. But just trying to explain a little bit our approach to that kind of broad topic in general, if that was helpful.
Great. Yeah, it was thank you very much. And David, I'm going to call on you again, because I know you and I have had a number of conversations about using this as an educational tool as well. And some of the just the information that might be helpful for people to sort of put these pieces together would, you know, even Jen Souls is on this call too. So even, you know, a list of all of our invasive species or target species that we currently have, because I think people would be amazed how many there are that the county is trying to deal with, and that volunteers are working on too. Or, you know, what fauna has, do we still have records of here? What's been extirpated? I mean, that kind of thing is just in maybe in appendices, or that nature of educational type stuff. I know some of that, those recommendations have been out there as well. David, don't want to put you on the spot, but I know you and I had a fair amount of conversation about that. So if you
Yeah,
want to
no, I don't mind at all. Strategic plans are guidance documents, but they're also educational documents. The majority of people who see a completed plan, if they were led to it and not already much involved in the subject matter, would probably not be too familiar with much of the content, at least not put in that format. And so it's an opportunity to bring on board a wide range of people and interests to see how the county envisions an approach to an area of responsibility, whether it be stewardship or infrastructure investment, which is pretty big chunk of some of the plan, some of the comp plan components. It's, those are very much about a good thing to do, but very much about how to invest in infrastructure to do it. I think the introductory section needs to be really robust, needs to read very cleanly, needs to be very logical and including a flow of ideas and content that is almost self-explanatory, doesn't ask much of the reader, and provides a solid underpinning for the sections on strategic directions and the background on those and the recommendations. That also, getting to your other point, it holds true for the appendices. If you look at the PSMP, the appendices are equal to the overall plan in number of pages. They're information resources. People use them for purposes that are sometimes independent of a specific question about the plan. It's just a reference, and that's so much easier these days when everything's electronic, and it's not a question of how many pages to print. So I think we should be extremely wide thinking about what we include in the appendices. And I know that this is just first draft and that's not really the focus of the draft, but the embellishment that those kinds of sections can provide in support of the current conditions sections or in support of the various other components of both the introductory portion and also the recommendations. That includes what are our organizational resources to do stewardship and to do conservation and to do some of these other things. What are the informational resources that we have and what we're pursuing, whether it's inventories about wildlife and both flora and fauna, whether it's profiles of our important natural areas, maps and diagrams, and even schematics about things like, that are very germane to some of the other plans, but also germane to this one, such as our stormwater flow, because that's very much about stormwater infrastructure and what we can do to prevent damage to homes and to property and to natural areas. But it's also about, this plan becomes also what can everyone do to contribute to the solution, not just be part of the problem. So there's an awful lot of informational value to making this a document that helps everyone in the county understand how they fit in and why the county wants to take this integrated approach to all of these various plan pieces that deal with our natural capital, our natural assets, our environmental concerns. And that ranges all the way from big development projects to what people do in their own yards. So it's all a good resource to build on. Does that make sense?
Great, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to, rather than me paraphrasing our conversation, I thought to have you give a little summary of that too. That also reminds me to one of the other comments that I have heard from several folks, and I know I've made it myself, is some kind of recommendation on developing biophilic design guidelines so that people understand what it is we are asking them to do, especially when we're looking at some of our larger development projects, since this plan does include that broader scope. So just looking through notes and seeing if there's anything else that we wanted to highlight. Also, yeah, there have also been a few comments too about just the unevenness of the text. I know that sometimes happens when you've got different consultants working on different parts of it or different staff working on it. So I know that sometimes is hard to have it read as one document, but there are definitely parts of it that don't feel as connected as some of the others. Okay, so let's see, Michaela or Phil or let's see, we've got. Thank you for all the staff that are here tonight. I appreciate you all being here. We're short on commissioners and long on staff, so thank you. But I would just want to make sure that I have a chance to, if any of the other commissioners have any comments they would like to make or anything you want to bring back to their respective commissions. I know we've not had a chance to meet since none of the commissions, I believe, have met since our last Energize meeting. So I know it's all new to be able to have that kind of feedback. Michaela.
Yeah, just wondering, Joan has a number of comments that are probably too long for me to read here. And I'm not sure if they're gonna have to be shortened at some point or whether she can just submit the whole things, but we did meet over the weekend, but haven't had a chance to integrate our comments. I have 6 pages of notes that I have input into the document, but I could share just my top takeaway priorities. I agree with a lot of the comments that you've made so far, Carolyn, but if it will be helpful, I could read through some of those.
Sure, I think it would be. I think it's helpful just for us to hear each other's thoughts on it because we're all coming at it from a slightly different perspective. So yeah, I think it would be great to get that. If you can give us the high points, that would be wonderful.
Okay, just in terms of my priorities, having read through the document, some of the most important pieces to pull out are 1, connected corridors and through land purchases and easement acquisition, deer management to reduce the population, encroachment monitoring and enforcement, managing of invasive species, both plant and animal, the creation of outdoor classrooms for every school and linking that with tree canopy and natural resource monitoring, such as with iTree Eco and phenology monitoring with Nature's Notebook, which is a program from the National Phenology Network, linking that with urban wood reuse and utilization, such as the Pope Farm Nursery in Montgomery County. And there is the potential, obviously, for collaborating with either the Casey Trees Nursery or another municipality in doing so. But there's a big linkage there that occurs. For example, the Pope Farm Nursery, they take dead trees removed from Montgomery County, and they create mulch, firewood and lumber, which are sold. They also create outdoor classroom seating for outdoor classrooms. They create lumber for the equivalent of their career center for students to use. And there's an opportunity we can include arborist training in our career center. Moving on, stormwater mitigation measures, capturing more stormwater at the source, reinstating the Stormwater Wise program on a sliding scale depending on income. There are a number of reasons for this, including increasing native plants in yards, light pollution reduction through a dark sky ordinance, and lot coverage is the elephant in the room. If that's appropriate for this document, I wasn't sure, even though it was mentioned, how much we can actually do about that. And many of these initiatives will require either one-time funding or continuous funding. And without that, I see it as kind of an empty promise.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that lot coverage keeps coming back as
well, it wasn't quite clear to me. It was kind of surprising for me to see it in there, and I was, wasn't sure if this is the appropriate place to deal with it, but it's definitely the elephant in the room in a lot of conversations. And at some point, we just need to tackle it, whether it's here or elsewhere.
right. Well, and I think that helps when we're thinking about prioritization of issues as we did in the public space master plan. We came out with our top tier recommendations, and that is what staff has been focusing on. So I think that's useful to get that perspective as well.
Yeah, so I can forward you these comments from Joan and from me if you're interested.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. That's helpful to have that summary though. Okay, let's see. Any other comments from commissioners? So Ryan, I don't know if that gives you a sense, but presumably you'll be hearing from each of the commissioner or each of the commissions after our September meetings. It's a little bit of a short timeline for folks to be turning around letters, but I think people have had a fair amount of time to dig into it now too. So, you know, more to follow, I'm sure. But I think that gives a good summary, I think, of where we are on this right now.
Yeah, definitely. This is very helpful. And I do want to just reiterate, you know, for those of you compiling those comments, we have that Conveo tool that that Michaela alluded to, where you can transcribe these directly into the document. We're also happy to take these comments by email. We have the capacity to record them that way as well. So if they are, you know, detailed and extensive from the commission members, happy to receive those, however is easiest to transmit, just as a point of logistics.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, just a little clarifying on that as well, because there is the survey online. It's
Mhm.
kind of the general feedback survey, and then there's the Conveo tool.
Yes.
You've got some additional pop-ups coming up, and I know we've got the event on Wednesday, which I will be happy to send out to commissioners as well, the Zoom link for that too, that they can, if they want to share it with their commissions members also, we'll do that. Okay, so there's no excuse for not getting your comments in, right? I guess that's the bottom line here.
And I'm going to put a link in the chat that is the Share Your Thoughts landing page on the project website. It has links to all those digital comment tools that Caroline just mentioned, but also as we confirm dates and times and Zoom links for meetings, they will be added to that page as well. So everything that we've mentioned should be on that slide or on that web link.
Okay.
So if that's a easier place to pull it than to try to reference a PDF or a recording of this conversation in my slides, hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Cool. Yeah, and just since we already moved on to the reminder, I just wanted to put it up on screen.
Okay, good. Yes, some of us are visual learners, so this is very helpful. So, all right, if there's no other comments from commissioners, then I guess we will go ahead and move on. No, I guess we don't have any reports for the commissions because we haven't met, but we will go ahead and do some staff report, I guess. Alonso, do you have anything to share with us?
Yes, very quickly, just a couple quick things. One, of course, is that we welcome, of course, Sue Kim as our new natural resources technician. And again, you had a chance to just meet her briefly. We've also have just, there was a winning bid, I guess, as far as the deer assessment. That will be updated on the deer page for the county as far as timelines and other types of things. We will be starting now restoration planting events that will start in mid-September all the way through October, perhaps into November. So, you know, we'll be planting, I think, probably close to about 2,000 plants in multiple different planting events throughout that season. It probably, well, again, we haven't chosen all the sites, and it is all weather dependent and so forth, but just so you know, that is starting up soon. We also are continuing our nursery work dates. They are again on Tuesdays from 2 to 4 p.m., unless those dates are also used for planting events as well. And as an aside, also, there will probably be since we do have DES here on the call with Ty and Lily, well, we've met about doing a plant rescue and so forth as they continue to do some different work around Sparrow Swamp and so forth. And so that'll be something that will be advertised in the near future as well. And that will conclude, I think, my report. Unless again, Jen and Sue, although you're brand new, but again, Jen, unless I missed something that I should have mentioned.
I think that covered it.
Okay, good deal. Thank you. That's staff report.
Okay, can I get just a couple, two things on the deer assessment? So you said that's going to be up on the web page when?
Yeah, okay, soon as we, so we're waiting to hear back from some approval of some language and so forth that will then be posted on the Deer webpage, hopefully within the next few days.
Okay, and that will be.
It'll have a
kind of-
timeline, it'll talk a little bit about what's being planned, the 3 phases of what's going on, that sort of thing.
Okay, good, thank you. Had one other question for you, but I can't remember what it was, so I guess we'll go with that. Any other comments, questions from commissioners tonight? We've missed anything? I can't believe we're doing this early. I guess that helps, and there's so few of us that are here. I really appreciate all of the staff representation tonight. I know you all have been working really hard on getting this, both plans, the Chesapeake Bay plan as well as the Forestry Natural Resource Plan. So I appreciate the staff effort on that and for being with us tonight. It's just super helpful to be able to get the updated information on that. Alonso, did you have something else?
Yeah, last reminder, please. So again, we will be meeting in person next time, and the meeting location will be in a small conference room at the Trades Building. The address and all that information will be sent out to you once we've gotten everything cleared and whatever. We'll send that out as far as the next invite. There will still be an opportunity to for the public and so forth to meet virtually. It's a hybrid version of our meeting, so both in person and hybrid for the general public as well. And again, meeting location will be the small conference room at the Trades Building.
Okay, and we will be following the same rules that each of the other commissions are following in the process, the ones that you all, when we sat around and adopted that. Michaela?
Yes, I had a question for those of us representing other commissions. I know each commission has those rules you can attend to virtually, but I'm wondering.
It's actually 25% that you can do virtually. So anyway, it's funny.
Okay,
funny how
well,
they figured
the
numbers.
question is, so me representing C2E2, would I have that same rule on this? Or since?
Yeah, it would, your 25% would start anew for the Energ meetings. Yes. As it's not like going to cancel each other out if you're doing one on C2E2 and one on Energ. They would be separate, counted separately.
Yeah, and again, we're not allowed to meet twice virtually back to back, but we are allowed to have 2 virtual meetings. The rest will be in person, and again, it will be in a small conference room at Trades.
It's 25%, right? It's not just 2.
Yeah. Well, but it amounts to basically, I think.
Unless we go back to meeting monthly, then it might be.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Yet again, the Virginia Assembly. Setting down the rules,
yeah.
right?
So are people kicked off if they miss more than their 25%?
Do they go to volunteer jail? I don't know. We'll find out. Commission penalty box. I don't know what the deal is, but anyway.
Yeah, life is hard enough without, anyway.
Right. Yes, it does seem a little silly, but we're going to be following the rules. So that's what we'll be doing. All right. Well, we usually don't end this early, but it's great people can have their evenings back. And again, want to thank staff for the presentations and other folks for being with us this evening. I appreciate it and hope that folks will participate both in some of the outreach events that are coming up on the Forestry and Natural Resource Plan, the one on Wednesday evening, as well as some of the pop-up events. And then on the 29th, where the staff will be doing a facilitated discussion on some of the top issues that have come up. And our next meeting will actually be on October 3rd, which is the closing date for comments for the Forestry and Natural Resource Plan. So there does seem to be some symmetry there. So make sure you get your personal comments in as well as the commission comments that we will be sending to staff. So anyway, thank you all very much. It's good to see you virtually, and we'll see you in person on October 3rd.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks all. Have a great night.
And I will end the recording.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.